Hey everyone, welcome back to another awesome episode of Push the Point, where I have the Calling champion, Sammy Braben. Dude, how's it feel to be
pretty good.
The UK champion of the Calling?
It's pretty good. It's pretty good, Hamish. I'm very happy. Yeah. I couldn't believe it happened. You know, it was like
it's what an amazing run. It's I imagine it's been a couple of weeks since the Calling, and you've been a busy boy, so that's why it's been a couple of weeks waiting to get this deck turned up, because I would have loved to have got this to you a lot sooner, but you've been quite busy. But we're here now, everyone, and hopefully, if you're intrigued of picking up Iyslander for your nationals, Sammy here is going to break down what his deck is and how he ran that through the whole Calling, and hopefully you might be inspired to pick this up, because Iyslander, despite the fact that everyone still says she's not the top hero, man, you and Rhea proving that wrong over and over again. Yeah. So before we go into the deck take, let's talk a little bit about your Calling run during the Swiss rounds and everything. So I heard you faced a fair amount of Bravo.
Faced a lot of Bravo. So I had some very good gem pairings, I think.
Yeah.
So I think in the current meta, Iyslander only really has like one bad matchup.
Right.
And that's Lexi, which is a bit of an issue because like
that was a lot of people.
It's a lot of people on Lexi, but like you're really good into basically like you. I think Icelander's basically good or even into like pretty much everything else.
Right.
And I faced one Lexi in the entire Calling.
Right. Okay.
I did win the matchup, but like I wouldn't want to play it like. I wouldn't want to have played into like 5 or 6 Lexis, but I had some very good matchups, you know.
Right.
Against some very good people as well, but like there was like particularly by day 2, a lot of the Lexis were dropping like just below the top tables, and there's a lot of like Bravo kicking around at the top tables, and Iyslander has a fantastic Bravo matchup.
Yeah. I was starting to notice that when we were watching all of it. I was just like, oh man, where's all these Lexis? And then and it's just all these Bravos and Icelanders and everyone, even like Azuri and stuff. But then I imagine all these Azuris are also just eating up they're doing your work. they're doing my work.
It's fantastic. You know, I got some good matchups to get like to the top tables. Yeah. And then when I was there, I'm like, I see everyone else is gatekeeping the Lexis out for me. You know, it's fantastic. And so I'm just like playing into Bravos, Azuris, which I did actually lose my one match to George, but
but that was on stream.
That feels bad.
Yeah.
But It was a painful one to go and rewatch that. But yeah, I think it is generally an Iyslander favourite matchup. That there's like Briar and stuff, and basically all the Lexis I think were not expecting the fatigue from Bravo and weren't prepared for it. Andro might also struggles I think into Bravo as well.
Yeah. Depending on what sort of but Dromo's in that weird space of loads of different builds, but yeah. But we're here for Iyslander.
I think I don't know. I could so Iyslander basically just has a lot of really good matchups into a lot of the heroes. Dromai can be tricky, but the really heavy redline version is the one that's quite popular right now.
Yeah.
And they just don't have any they have like 6 blues in the deck.
Yeah.
It means you're quite able to disrupt them, because anytime you demand one resource, you're demanding a whole extra card.
Yeah.
Which really means a lot. And Channel Lake Frigid can like absolutely ice them out for a few turns. You know, that's demanding a whole extra card for every card they play. You know,
it's huge. It's huge.
It's huge.
So let's get into the deck. Here it is.
Yeah.
We've got the Iyslander Queen. It's It's the Calling winning deck. We're seeing Iyslander doing incredibly well into battle hardens as well. It's just crazy the fact that you can play on the opponent's turn, with specifically a blue card from Arsenal. So we are kind of going through this as well, Sammy, with a bit of a sort of new player focus as well. So we're going to have some new people that are just jumping into the game for the first time. They're seeing that Icelander's doing incredibly well. So we'll be going through some of this with a bit of a... I'm sure a lot of people will know what's to come. But we're going to aim this as well as... I've never played Icelander, or I want to play Icelander. What do I do in a sort of new player focus as well? So we're going to jump in between those two things. So whenever you play an ice card on the opponent's turn, you create a Frostbite token, and that will probably happen quite a bit because a lot of your blues are ice.
It will happen quite a lot. So if you start off with having a look at some of the cards, then actually, I'll first call out Blizzard while I'm on this. Blizzard is an ice instant, and it also generates a Frostbite as well, which you should pay attention for. Like, the Icelander ability has two parts. The first part is that when you play an ice card on the opponent's turn, it makes Frostbite. And the second part is you can play blue non-attacks from your arsenal at instant speed. So most of the time you play a blue ice non-attack from your arsenal to generate a Frostbite.
Yeah.
But sometimes you play non-ice cards from arsenal. And sometimes, particularly in Blizzard, can generate the Frostbite without being from arsenal. And you also generate a Frostbite when you Storm Strides out an ice card.
Yeah.
But anyway, so if you want to have a look at maybe some of the blue ice cards, I run quite a lot of ice cards in my deck.
Yeah.
We've got the Frosting, Ice Bolt, Aether. These are all blue block 3 like wizard spells that you generally like. These are all basically should be in every list. They're blue block 3. They're ice cards. They're very important. In particular, Frosting is the least useful one, and you tend to just want to block with it. 1 damage isn't particularly relevant, and it doesn't feed as nicely into Waning Moon.
No.
Aether has a really nice cost curve with Waning Moon. So on your first cycle, I would... Aether's still a fine card to block with. It's not one of the great arsenals, but it's a decent arsenal because off 1 blue, you can come for 2 Arcane, a Frostbite, and then Waning Moon, which is 5 Arcane in total and 1 Frostbite. You want to try and do this when the Frostbite will be meaningful. But like 2 cards for 6 is like a fine rate generally, and if the Frostbite could get even more value in, that's even better. Yeah. Then we've got the other ice cards. So a lot of these are like 2 blocks now.
Yeah.
Insidious Chill.
This card. This card.
I'll leave Insidious Chill for later.
Yeah, this card though is huge.
Is a huge. I'll come to it. But we've got Cold Snap and Polar Blast. And these are 2 of like the really high priority Arsenal targets.
Yeah.
Because if they're played from Arsenal, you get to draw a card. And you can come in and off 1 card, and you pitch a blue. You tax them. The Cold Snap can freeze their Arsenal if they don't pay a resource, so the Cold Snap can possibly tax them an extra resource if they want to play their Arsenal that turn. They give Frostbite, they let you Waning Moon, and they draw you a card. So effectively, you've used 1 card to do 3 Arcane damage and give them a Frostbite, which is generally a very good rate.
Yeah.
They can also be saved for your turn as well, because they have Go Again.
Yeah.
So you can then not play them on the opponent's turn if the opponent doesn't give you a good window for it. Play it on your turn. Waning Moon will only come in for 2. Or you can just play it off Tunic. And then it'll do good value there as well. We've also got Winter's Bite, which I quite like Winter's Bite. I know it's a less popular card, but Winter's Bite works very well as like an extra card to have in a hand with a Wounded Bull in it, as long as the opponent doesn't have Tunic up.
Yeah.
Because you can Winter's Bite into Wounded Bull, and it gets a card from hand regardless, and then you get to attack them with a Wounded Bull. They can't use their extra resources for anything. So you've traded one of your blue ice cards for a card from them, and then you hit them with a Wounded Bull, and then if you put something into Arsenal, get them on their turn again.
Yeah.
The other option is if you Arsenal Winter's Bite, and you play it on the opponent's turn, it will tax 2 resources from them, 1 from the Frostbite and 1 from the Winter's Bite. And most of the time when you're playing into Icelander, you're thinking about how, okay, I'll make sure I've got 1 floating resource to pay for Frostbites. And then Winter's Bites can surprise them by line out. You've got to pay 2 if you want to keep playing your turn. Yep.
Yeah.
Which can and again, has to go again. You can leave it in the arsenal and just play it on your turn if you don't see a good window for it.
Yeah.
And as also, which can be very nice, is if someone is moving to end with 1 with one card from Arsenal, with one card in hand, they clearly want to Arsenal. You can have Winter's Bite to force it out of their hand, which is very nice.
Yeah, yeah.
I playing a game against Kano just casually recently, and Winter's Bite. He had to crack an E-pot to stop to not let his card to keep his card, which is very nice for me, you know.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
And then you've got so that's some of your like.
These are like the bread and butter.
Bread and butter, yeah. They're like your common blues that you would see floating around, and then we're going to move into more of the more specific power ones. Now you've already mentioned Blizzard as one of them. This isn't a non-attack action card. This is an instant, so there is no block, but it is that card that, like you said, it's the gotcha card, isn't it? Like, you know, especially when it's coming into anyone with a lot of go again. It's incredibly taxing to get out of.
Blizzard is really nasty. There are situations where you can do some really nasty things with Blizzard as well. If you're into particularly into ninjas and people who play Art of War.
Yeah.
If you can Blizzard in response to Art of War, if they've got an attack, if they've got an attack on the stack, and then Art of War, particularly, it's mostly into ninjas actually.
Yeah.
They come in with attack. They try and do Art of War like to give it +1 without you expecting it. And if they leave themselves with one card in hand and go for the banish draw 2, and you Blizzard, they have to pay using their card in hand, which means they can't banish to draw 2.
Yeah, it's just,
or they lose go again.
It's just
you
huge.
can like completely shut out a turn there. It's really crippling.
Yeah, yeah. So, but it's also risky as well because you've got this. Do you have this running in your main board? Genuinely,
I do actually.
But it doesn't block as well. That's the thing.
So the thing is, Iyslander pitches basically every turn.
Yeah.
Both turn cycles, like of both people's turn. It's very easy to not have to like you generally. This is why Heart of Fyondel's generally quite good in the list. I'm not running it
right
at the moment, mostly for cost reasons. But you generally pitch on both turn cycles, so it's very easy for you to get non-block cards out of your hand without really it being an issue. It's mostly an issue if you're drawing multiple Blizzards at the same time.
Yeah.
But like having a non-block is generally not a big issue, and Blizzard can be like you frequently prevent like more than 3 damage as well. You know?
Yeah.
If you can just catch people without the ability to pay for the Blizzard, it cripples them.
Yeah.
Also, if you can get the thing you can do with Blizzard is after Katsu has discarded a card to grab a card.
Yeah.
You can then Blizzard after he's done that, and he probably doesn't. And if he doesn't have a card in hand again, because he's just discarded it to go for something else.
Oh, it's just it's just absolutely really wrecked.
And it's even better if they're using Vascular Pouncing Links and they've cracked Vascular Pouncing Links as well.
Oh.
And you can stop so much with that. It's crippling.
Yeah.
Frequently. Yeah. Like I will say though, I think Blizzard's. I think if Blizzard's worth running into any hero that has any amount of go again.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Because into even into like Bravo. If Bravo comes in with Zealous Beltings or Rouse the Ancients, which are like 2 of his like better cards in the matchup, you can Blizzard it and you force an extra card over hand.
Yeah. And
then like with an extra Frostbite from Arsenal, you can stop him getting off the Anathos, which is like 6 damage.
Yeah, and when you think about the points of value of just going, it doesn't block for 3, but by just playing this at the right sort of time, I don't necessarily need to block the card. I just stopped 6 damage, which is better than any free card block out there. So 100%.
Absolutely.
So go on.
I was just gonna say, in addition, a lot of like Bravo's attacks are not that scary. Like Crippling Crush is obviously very nasty, but he needs to have a 4-card hand for that, and it's like relatively easy to keep him off that because Bravo doesn't work with Seismic Surges into Iyslander well because they give you a priority window to give him a Frostbite before it resolves, which is very, very mean. And so it's very easy to like keep them out of hand, to just pitch them to keep them out of hand when you don't need them as well into Bravo. So I think it's generally fine to run Blizzard into basically like every matchup, personally, because it's an always nice. It's a nice card. You can fuse with it. You can just Waning Moon it away if you don't want it after that. I think Blizzard is a really strong card.
Yeah, awesome. So we'll move on to some of the more powerful Majestics. So I'm going to mosey on over to the Frost Hex and the Insidious Chill. We'll save the absolute obvious to last. So Frost Hex, blue block 3, and sets up this huge combo turn, right?
Mostly. So what Frost Hex does is it's blue. It's block 3 and it says ice on the bottom of it.
Yes.
And in 99% of games, that's all it does.
Yeah.
You should you should regard it as textless. That you should never put it in Arsenal unless you're like very confident. And even in like on a turn 1 play against a Guardian or some other similarly 1 action a turn thing, it can be quite nice.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, it's a blue block 3. However, it fulfills a really important role in the deck. Because if your opponent's trying to fatigue you, this is your anti-fatigue plan. And generally, it's worth trying to actively keep Frost Hexes in the deck if your opponent's on AB3. Because if they've seen that you've blocked with them and they're no longer in the deck, they can be like, okay, I'm going to turtle up. I'm just going to block everything you do. I'm going to AB3 everything, and you're not going to be able to kill me before you run out of deck. And then I'm just going to like be able to use my weapon to kill you. So Bravo can do this if he's on AB3. Like Azuri could do this if she's an AB3. It's not really. This isn't really an issue as much as something you just need to be aware of and try not to block with all your Frost Hexes, because you will sometimes your opponents will be like, I've seen they've blocked with all their Frost Hexes. I can just fatigue them now. Because Waning Moon, unfortunately, requires you to play a non-attack action before you play it. So unless you every time you fight you want to use Waning Moon, you've got to use a card out of deck to do that. Which is like fine in most situations. It just means that you need to have like an anti-fatigue plan. And so Frost Hex fulfills this while also being a blue ice block 3. And so it's just like always on the list. But you should be very, very careful about playing it. I would basically not play it. Like, I think one of the times that I maybe would play it is if you've done an Ice Vein, you've stripped cards out of their hand, you can ask for Frost Hex, play Frost Hex on their turn when they haven't got anything really to swing back at you, and then it's like, okay, because you're not really losing too much for playing it. But most of the time, I would really avoid it quite strongly.
Okay.
But we'll talk about the other combo piece now, Insidious Chill.
Oh, yes.
Insidious Chill is another important part of the combo, with Frost Hex and Ice Eternal, the anti-fatigue combo, but it's also just a really strong card in its own right. It's only a 2-block, but it's a blue ice card. And it doesn't do anything when you play it, but the next 3 times that you Ice Fuse, you make the opponent have to pay 2 or discard.
Yeah.
You can, if you've saw my finals against Pablo, I set up a couple of Insidious Chills, and then I hit the Ice Veins, which are fuse cards.
Yeah.
And you can just strip like the whole hand away, and they can't do anything on their turn, and you just get to like time walk them basically.
Yeah,
they can be really strong.
You took it, but it's almost like you have to trade your health to get this down properly, right? Because you could probably sit there and go, yeah, okay, I can block up 6, and they go, okay, well, wham, here's some stuff, and yeah, okay, fair enough. But here's the Insidious Chill. Here's the Frostbite. Can stop your turn? It didn't. Okay, I take some damage. And I get to put a card note into Arsenal. I have taken some damage, but then you watch that final. I saw Pablo was on 30 something health, and you're on 8, and I was just like, never rule Iyslander out until it's over. But this doesn't look good.
Yeah, it was pretty nice. There's a little bit where I'm like, if particularly there was a turn when I E-striked him, I'm on like 8 and he's on 30. And if he has like a crippling crush or something and like enough blues to throw it, this is the point where I'm worried. Yeah. Because this is the bit where I'm like, okay, where he's can just like take damage to swing tempo. But thankfully he had 2D reacts, which is really good for me there. Because it just means he can't swing back. Like he can't swing back.
No, yeah. That's. But regardless, Insidious Chill, like you said, for the combo and for even just trying to just getting that tempo.
It's just so good.
It's a massive key card for the deck.
You do need to be careful about when you're using it though, because if you have other ice cards on deck, but the best ones you have are Ice Vein.
Yeah.
And if you've already seen a lot of your Ice Veins by the time you see your Insidious Chills, it's generally not worth playing them out. unless you've pitched the earlier ones or like bottomed them in some other way, and you think the game will go long enough for you to see the ice veins and have enough health to play them out, you can maybe do it. But I generally would avoid it. Would avoid doing that in that time.
Okay.
You should just pitch it, and otherwise just get rid. Like, don't do anything with it, because it's a big tempo loss to play it. And if the opponent's just like, I see you've played Insidious Chill, I'm just going to hit you in the face really hard. That's really bad.
Yeah.
The other thing is Insidious Chills are really good against Rune Blades as well, because Rune Blades really like having really big hands.
Yeah.
And if you just set up Insidious Chill early, and then just like take their hands are looking a lot worse.
Yeah. As a big Viscero fan, I know this very well. It just takes one blue, and
yeah, it's unfortunate.
Yeah, you can get bad turns pretty quick.
Yeah. The other thing about Insidious Chill is it's the best turn 1 play you can have is just setting up an Insidious Chill. It's so good.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
Amazing.
setting up an Insidious Chill is incredibly strong. But then I think it's time for the piece de resistance.
Yeah.
Of the
I actually do hope we're on the same boat here, because which I'm pretty sure we are. It's Channel Lake Frigid. Come on.
It's Channel Lake
Frigid.
You know, like I mean,
this guy's cracked. This card was cracked when it first came out. It was crazy when Iyslander wasn't even in existence, and then turns out still this card is really good.
Pretty good. It's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Channel Lake Frigid, it's a blue ice card. It's a block 3, so it never leaves the game. Never.
Insane.
It's a block 3. It's like the fact, right? So like even against heroes that it's not super, that the actual effect of it isn't that great against, like Bravo, you always run it because it's still a blue ice block 3.
Yeah.
At its base level, it's good. It would be in the deck, kind of regardless of what the text is, almost.
Yeah.
And the text is really good. So it's whenever you play it, it makes sure anything your opponent tries to activate or play cost 1 additional resource. And this is crippling to like go wide aggro decks, because they have to end up paying like 3, 4, 5 resources extra than what they want to do, and that just absolutely shuts them down. It's so nasty. In addition, you can play it on your opponent's turn, and then it only gets the counter when it comes back round to your turn. So it's reasonably doable to keep it around for 3 turns, for 3 of your opponent's turns. And at that point, it's just crippling. Like, it's so hard to play well under Lake Frigid. Your opponent's frequently forced to just like try and block out, and then because that's the way they can get the best use out of their cards, is they just block. So sometimes you want to like. There's generally a mix of, do you want to Arsenal like would I want to try and Arsenal an Ice Vein to try and keep it around a 3rd turn, or would I like to Arsenal an Ice card so I can do something on my opponent's turn if they're going to block out really heavily? And you've got to make that decision. It's kind of tough sometimes, but I think Channel Lake Frigid, absolutely so strong. The other thing about it is it's a 2-cost card, and it's absolutely your most powerful card. So you always want to be careful about when you're playing it. In particular, if you can play it while Tunic is at 3 resource, when you have Tunic counter up, you can then grab Tunic counter to Waning Moon for another 3 Arcane. Very strong. And the other thing is, you frequently want to like leave it in Arsenal if your opponent's not going to do a great turn. Like, if they've just got some like meh 2-attack turn, is it worth using Link Frigid there? Maybe not. Especially, absolutely not if you won't have an ice card to pitch to keep it around for next turn. You really want to be making sure you can keep it around at least for 2 turns. And you should try for the 3rd one. The 3rd one is usually, if you get the 3rd turn, it's usually very crippling.
Yeah, no, 100%. So yeah, Channel Lake Frigid, very, very, very strong card. So that's your ice package, right? I know that you've got some more into the sideboard here, but we'll talk a little bit more about the sideboard when we move around. It's really weird because normally I do this bit where I go through all the equipment, but Iyslander is such a different thing that it's going through all through the main deck first in terms of why we've got these cards there. They're very much quite, in my head, it's very straightforward in terms of what their design and that plan is. Like, you know, as you can see with all the ice cards and everything, like it kind of just all makes sense in that way. But then we'll go through the equipment after we've done this main board. So we do have a couple of cards here that are not ice cards, that are elemental wizard cards.
Yes.
Which we'll go through the obvious one, man. A for Ice Vein. A for Ice Vein is that card. It's not an ice card, but it is the reason you have ice cards in. Yes. Right? It's just crazy good as an attack.
They are very strong. So I'm running 8 Aether Ice Veins. I've got 3 reds, 3 blues, and 2 yellows.
Oh, there's just 2 yellows. Okay.
Yeah, just the 2 yellows. Like, I think running the third one tends to put me to like red heavy, because the Aether Ice Vein yellow is pretty much a red in this list. Because the deck is built around pitching 3 every turn. And so unless you've got Tunic Counter up, you can use Tunic Counter to turn this yellow to turn the Ice Vein into a blue, basically. But it's not great. And most of the time, I just tend to like value them as reds. But they're still so strong.
Yeah.
Because Ice Vein, having 5 Ice Veins, I think gives me enough Ice Veins for chill triggers as well. I have to file them. That's a decent amount. And what it does is it does 5 Arcane or 4 Arcane. And if the opponent takes any of that, they have to pay 2 or discard. And most people do not run AB5.
No.
This is not a thing that happens much. And most don't even run AB4. So you get this trigger off basically all of the time. And it's a great way to push cards out of the opponent's hand and do damage at the same time. And because of arcane damage, if they want to prevent the damage, they have to pay resources, which means that you can tax them even harder on your next turn. It's a really, really strong card. In addition, it's a block 3. The blue is a blue block 3. It's very nice to just have it. Like, it's a really, really strong card, I think.
Yeah.
One of the standout cards. Yeah.
Absolutely. Go on.
I was just going to say, one thing to remember about the elemental cards for new players is they look icy. They say ice in the name. They're not technically ice cards. Just for things like Icelander's ability, for things like Channeling Frigid. Just be careful about like what you think an ice card is. So they all say Ice Fusion on them, which means you have to reveal the ice card. They're not ice cards on themselves. They won't do stuff like this. You tend to therefore not use them as much on the opponent's turn. We do have some blue elemental wizard cards here in the Ice Veins, the Ice Tunnels, and the Brain Freezers.
Yeah.
I think that's it in main board.
Yeah.
These are generally less. You generally don't want to be playing these out of Arsenal too much because it doesn't give you the extra frostbite, and it's less useful for this reason.
Okay. Speaking, no, we'll move over to Brain Freeze. So you've got 2 copies of Brain Freeze. How come?
There's 2 in the main board, 1 in the sideboard.
Okay.
I think Brain Freeze and Winter's Bite, I'll swap in 2 to 3 of depending on matchup. It's like the main easy swap. Is if I think if the third Brain Freeze wants to come in for a matchup, I'll put it in. Brain Freeze is really good if you can get it on. If you can Arsenal Brain Freeze and then be like, I'll have a look at your hand and take the 0 cost out of it, and it can like completely cripple turns into like Rune Blades, into ninjas. If you take like the blue, if you just take the like key card that they needed, and also you just get to see the hand, which is very handy because you can just know what's coming and you can like plan around it. You don't have to be worried about maybe he's got this. You know what he's got. You've seen his hand. Brain Freeze I think is a really strong card for this. It also does trigger chill, but it's less good for this because the chill trigger happens first.
Yeah.
So they can then discard or pay the blue, the 0 cost, sorry, which then means that when you see the hand, you can't take anything and put it on top of the deck.
Yeah.
It's less useful. But Brain Freeze, it's still a blue block 3 card.
Yeah.
It's just a very generally strong card, I think. It's probably one that I'd maybe try and move like into the Mora sideboard into some matchups. Like it doesn't do much versus like Brava or anything ever. It's only ever a blue block 3 in that, and it's not an ice card. So
if there's ever a blue ice card that shows up, we know what's going.
Yeah. So Brain Freeze is one that I'd probably want to keep 3 of in sideboard, but doesn't necessarily want to be in the main board all the time.
Sure.
But it's a very strong card.
Who would you put them in? So what would you put them in against? Just opponents that you just know that are going to have some 0 costs and just
yes.
Yeah. Okay.
I would put them in against Dash, against Katsu, against Fi, against what else is there?
Any Lexies? No, they don't have any.
They tend not to do Lexi.
No, they don't tend to have much zero costs, right? They've got some zero cost arrows.
They have a few, but like you can miss.
Yeah.
And also they can respond by loading.
Yeah. Oh god. Yeah, but I am the wizard now.
Yeah. So they can respond by loading to get it out of hand. So I don't really tend to do it against Lexi.
Yeah.
It's probably playable into Azalea. You can like take a pump, but
yeah. I think it's the block 3 that's actually the strong bit, isn't it? Like it's just at least it's blocks with 3.
There is also definitely another matchup that I would play them into. Faikatsu, Briar and Viserai. Yeah. Faikatsu, Briar, Viserai, and I'm sure I said one more earlier that I can't remember now. Oh well.
Dash.
Yeah. Dash, yeah.
Yeah.
Those would be the 5 that I'd be like, oh yeah, definitely play into these.
Cool.
Because all of these run like a decent amount of zero costs. And particularly to Rune Blades, it's great into ninjas. Dash is like fine into, but Dash you just want block freeze, and like it's a fine card to. A lot of the time they run like 9 0 to 60s and like 90 or like 60 bones. So there's usually something to grab, but it's not fantastic value. It's not as good into Dash. No. But for like the Rune Blades and ninjas, you can like cripple their turns by taking it.
Yeah, that's
very good card. Really strong one.
Should we?
I think.
Oh yeah, I was going to say one more. Yeah, we've got the Ice Eternal, which is actually kind of fits in because we were talking about this combo with Frost Hex.
Yeah.
And Insidious Chill. This is the card, right?
The Ice Eternal's the other 2 cards are the setup for the combo, and this is the actual combo piece. So it's an Ice Fusion card, so you can trigger Insidious Chill, and you pay resources, and you get half that many resources as Frostbites that you give to your opponent, and then it does damage equal to the number of Frostbites if you fused it.
Yeah.
This is generally a card that you don't want to play because it doesn't do that much. Paying 6 only gives you 3 Frostbites and does 3 damage. So that's 3 cards to get like 3 damage and 3 Frostbites, which is not a great rate.
Right.
But what it's really good for is if you can like play out of Arsenal on your opponent's turn. If you've already stripped some cards from their hand on your turn with attacking or something, then you can Ice Eternal. You can pay like 10 with 3 blues and Tunic counter, giving 5 Frostbites. You fuse, so it does 5 damage. The Insidious Chills will take the cards out of the hand, so they can't break the Frostbites. And then if you've got 3 Frost Hexes, that'll do an extra 3 damage per Frostbite, so you do 20 damage overall, which is really strong. And it's a way to like push damage against decks that are trying to fatigue you. This is the main use of the card. It is otherwise a blue block 3, and there are some times when it's useful. You can put it in Arsenal and do a 0 cost fuse. It doesn't do anything, but it does trigger Insidious Chill if you need to do it for that. So there is other uses out of the card.
Yeah.
But it's mostly there for the combo. And for similar reasons to Frostex, you tend to not want to block with this card into AB3 matchups. You want to just keep it around so that they know that they can't just try and stall and fatigue yet.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. No. Awesome.
So I think that's all of our blues now.
Yeah. That's all the blue and the block 3s. So. I want to go over. I know that we'll go over some of the attacks, and then we'll move over to the equipment, and then we'll end on the awesome sideboard. Right. So you are coming in. Raya had an approach of going more arcane in the battle hardened events, and you went down for the. Well, I'd say if you've been playing Flesh and Blood for a bit, there was the world champion Michael Hamilton showcased the Wounding Bull version. So there's these 2 sort of ways of approaching the actual applying pressure damage side of Iyslander. You went down the more physical attack route, which is really cool. I like seeing that little switcheroo of did you bring AB3? Oh, give me some cards. Because physical damage is still physical damage, right? So what made you want to do that?
So I think I've always been on the Wounded Bulls. I've played Iyslander like a little bit, and I think that the Wounded Bull version is generally stronger. You do better rates than the Arcane version, basically all of the time. What the Arcane version does better is it has more ability to exploit people's weaknesses. To like, if someone's on AB3 against Arcane, it allows them to like block out some of the on hits and stuff. and so you lose the pressure of just being like, so you lose the pressure of being able to present like four damage off one card, 8 damage off two cards.
Yeah.
In return to being able to do more disruption. Because if you saw Rare's first finals at the first Battle Hardened finals, I think it was Cincinnati.
Yeah.
Lexi in the finals opponent did not have any arcane
No.
benefit in that match.
It was
real bad.
Yeah.
And so in situations like this where people aren't expecting you, this arcane build could do really well. I think it's also generally better against Dromai who can't, like, particularly the really red line Dromai, because they can't block your cards because they're all red, so they all block for like 1 against arcane.
Right.
And which is really crippling for them as well, because you just get to push damage very quickly, very easily against them. You also are immune to Codex of Frailty because you don't have any attacks to go put in your arsenal.
Right.
That's one thing of disadvantage of having the bulls is if your opponent Codex of Frailty you, it's quite annoying for you because you have to go and put a card in your arsenal, discard a card, and this can really fuck up your turn cycle. It's quite awkward to do that if you then have to, you're having to discard your key card to go put a Wounded Bull in your arsenal, which you have to then play and then leave you with no arsenal. This can be very awkward. So against Lexi, you do have to be careful about when you're emptying your arsenal and being like, do I think this Codex of Frailty coming? Am I going to get like ruined by a Codex of Frailty? These are important things that it needs to know. But if you're against like a more value plan, and these like the arcane spells are not going to just give you free value against your opponent. Wounded Bulls are a great rate. Like you start lower than your opponent as Iyslander, and because you're a wizard, you get the ability to act on your opponent's turn in response to them doing stuff. So you can try and stay a little bit lower than your opponent basically the entire game. In which case, Wounded Bull is a 2-card 8, which is a fantastic rate. You know. You're basically demanding either 3 cards from your opponent, or they're going to leak damage. It's a really strong card, and Findel's Fighting Spirit is pretty much the same thing, with the added benefit of that you can block with it to gain life, as well. It's kind of a 3-block, and if you overblock with it, you can gain a life as well, which is handy and does come up more than you'd think. But you still want to prioritize attacking with the card.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah. You then got Scar.
Yes.
Which is just another really good card because it's got Go Again when you're lower, and you're always frequently lower, and that's just a 0 for 4 with Go Again.
Yeah.
It's a really, really strong card.
Yeah.
You also can just play Scar as like a 1-card hand. 0 for 4 is decent anyway.
Yeah.
So I think Scar is honestly really, really strong actually. It does have some issues when in like the mirror, but like I guess we can maybe talk about matchups later. But Scar is one of the really strong cards. It's Scar into Bull, really strong turn. It lets you keep the pressure on with physical damage. And then we've got E-Strikes as well.
Yeah.
E-Strikes are probably the worst attack in the deck, but they're also the most versatile attack. And like when I say worst, I don't mean that they're not a card that I want to cut. They're a really strong card in the deck, but they are the card that I'm least wanting to attack with. I would the most happy to block with it, but it's a 3-block. It can be used off a 2-card hand to come in for 5 and draw a card from an arsenal. That's like a 1-card 5.
Yeah,
it's a really good rate.
Yeah.
If you draw a hand of all reds, and you've got like an E-Strike and like an E-Strike in there, you can use the E-Strike to pick to bottom another red to come in for 7.
Yeah.
E-Strike is a really, really good card, I think. But it's always the card that it's the card that fixes bad hands. But it's the card that is least good when you draw the perfect hand.
Yeah, no, 100%. 100%.
If you draw 3 blues and a red attack, you'd rather it was Wounded Bull or Fighting Spirit. But if you draw 3 reds and a blue, then you're quite happy that was a Enlightened Strike you drew, you know?
Yeah, no. And you went through Wounded Bull and you went through Did you explain Findel's Fighting Spirit or?
Findel's Fighting Spirit is basically like Wounded Bull, but like you get it's
the same thing.
It fulfills basically the same thing.
Although good for the blocking.
Good for genuinely the fact that you can like block 3 does come up. In fact, you can pseudo block for 3 does come up. And I had one match in my quarterfinals where my opponent is coming. I'm on 1 health.
Yeah.
My opponent is coming at me with Anathos with 3 cards in hand, and I'm pretty sure they've got a pummel.
Yeah.
So you can block 10, full hand block 10, including a Fighting Spirit, go up to 2. Next turn hand, I can block for 9 with 3 cards, and keep a card in hand.
Yes.
Which is let's then do something on my turn.
Yeah.
Which is really
it's that flexibility, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. Like Findos Fighting Spirit is probably the strongest card in the list. It except for Lake Frigid.
Yeah, except for
Lake Frigid. Then Spirit. It's the strongest red, I think. Fighting Spirit is fantastically good. And then we've also got 3 sinks. You know it, you love it. It's Sync Blow. It's 0 for 4 defense reaction. Does some hand fixing as well. Some lists are running Fate Foreseen at the moment, a couple of them.
Yeah.
I'm not sure necessarily about how much I like that. I think Sync is very strong, partly for the hand fixing as well.
Yeah.
And having a 0 for 4 that does hand fixing, I think it's just a strong card generally. It's useful into like Dorinthea. Generally, it's a good card.
Yeah.
So there's Sync.
It's Sync. That's Sync. Sync does Sync things. So
Sync does Sync things.
So that's your main board list. We'll move over to the equipment, and then we'll end on your sideboard. So you've got 3 big legendary cards here, but we'll start off with the Coronet Peak. So let me have a quick look at your sideboard. Oh, okay, you do have 2 pieces of equipment. So I've seen some lists where you've got Coronet Peak, and some people run the Crown of Providence as well, for some reason. But you're sticking with just Coronet Peak. How come?
I think that Coronet Peak is. I think Crown of Providence specifically was going to Ultim, because Ultim was pretty happy pitching on your turn.
Yeah.
So making him pay 1 wasn't really a big deal. But and he also ran Tunic, all the time. And so therefore you would run Crown of Providence as like a tiny upside, because he would try and CNC pummel you, and you could like dodge your arsenal if it was a bad arsenal, if you couldn't get it out instant speed. It was a fairly minor upgrade. I think right now though, Bravo, I think Coronet Peak tends to be fine into Bravo.
Yeah, stripping that card.
He doesn't really like pitching on your turn.
No.
They're both 2 block. You generally don't need the help against like CNC pummels, because you can get your arsenal out most of the time at instant speed. So I think Coronet Peak is basically fine into everything except wizards, and it's even fine into other bulllanders. Like Coronet Peak, the active ability is also a really important part of like turn cycles when you're trying to maintain Frigid frequently. You'll have a 2-card hand. You want an arsenal. Pitch an ice card to Coronet Peak. Keep Frigid around. Awesome card.
Yeah,
it's a really
I think
really
I agree. The Coronet Peak is just one of the reasons why actually you can keep, like you said, the Frigid around. That's like, when people are going, okay, how am I gonna? I've got to block up. I played Frigid, and how am I going to keep this thing around? It's like Coronet Peak, baby. Just literally, I just look at that as cool. Channel stays.
It's a really, really strong card. I think it's just 2 block as well. You try and save it till like the end of the game.
Yeah.
I generally don't want to use it early. The ability is very handy. It's quite important to a lot of your turn cycles. Particularly, the other thing is Iyslander semi-frequently draws like 4 blue hands. Yeah. And you frequently want to block out with these, but sometimes you're like, I'll want to keep 1 card to pitch to Coronet Peak, keep your opponent off a big hand. You know? And it lets you do something with these big 4 blue hands, because you've got Coronet Peak as an outlet to pitch to 1 though. So Coronet Peak, really strong card. The only matchup where I think it's like actively like not good into is Kano.
Yeah.
I think it's fine in the mirror, because it's just 2 block at least.
Yeah.
Because you never want to be the Arcane Iyslander in the mirror.
No.
If you look at Rhea's list, we'll get to the reason why when we look at our sideboard. But if you look at Rhea's list, she's running 6 big attacks. She's running in sideboard Fighting Spirit and I think Raging Onslaught.
Yeah.
And those come in for like the mirror, because you don't want to be the wizard who's just got Arcane in the mirror.
Okay.
Then I guess we'll move on to Tunic.
Tunic.
Would you believe it? Tunic's
Would
good.
you believe it?
It turns out that when you're taking like 15 turns in an average game, Tunic's really good.
100%.
Yeah. So Tunic, it has 1 block on it. It gives you resource every 3 turns. This is great. The resource can be used for quite a few things in the deck. The main ones it tends to be used for is playing your 2 costs out of Arsenal. So if you look, we've got Frigid, Ice Bolt, and Emeritus, which I just realised we didn't talk about, and I guess we'll get to in a minute.
Yeah.
But it's great to play those out where you can do, because you can play them out, take Tunic counter to Waning Moon for another 3. It's great value off the Tunic counter.
Yeah.
There's very strong card. Like, it's Tunic, it gives you resources. It gives you more resources in the long game, and you love to play the long game as Iyslander.
Yeah, I think that's I think that's probably that little point as well. Of like, we'll bring the Emeritus Scolding into that fold of like you don't have to go into it far too much, but yeah, it does full arcane damage when it's on your opponent's turn. Really good if you play it on their turn. Deal 4, Tunic, then deal 3. That's
it's a strong card. Pushing 7 off 2 cards is nice.
That's
yeah. But Emeritus is. It's not ice card. It doesn't give your opponent a frostbite. And when you see Emerituses early, you frequently want to pitch them early, so you'll see them in second cycle when your opponent's low.
Yeah, and the Emeritus is usually the way that lets you, when you're not doing the combo, this is the other card that's going to help you to go, wow, I'm just closing the game out. Because there's nothing really there's no other card that does full arcane damage on their turn. Like,
so not a blue card.
Not a blue card.
The other one. When you're at the end of the game, like kind of the nuts to have is Emeritus and Arsenal and Ice Vein from hand, and Red Ice Vein from hand.
Yeah.
Or another Emeritus. But like Emeritus is a card that really lets you push damage. It's a really strong card. We'll have a look at the card that lets you push all this damage.
Yeah.
Stormstriders.
Oh baby.
It's like, would you like to take an extra turn after you've just taken a turn?
Yes.
After your opponent's emptied their whole hand. It's great.
I think the Stormstriders is the reason you win.
Stormstriders is frequently the reason you win. Yeah. It's so strong. You get to play a card out of your hand at instant speed.
Mm-hmm.
It's also got Arcane Barrier 2 on it, just because. It's so strong.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Stormstriders are like probably. Yeah, they're probably. I say they're probably the best card on the list. Honestly, my one thing I'd say is that if you're a beginner looking to pick up Iyslander, Stormstriders are really important to the game plan. They are quite important in the list, and they're not cheap.
No, I was going to say, and I say this to everyone, and I noticed you got Ironhide Cor. Yeah, sure. You either play in the block 1 or Metacarpus nodes, which is you'll explain a little bit more. That just helps push the arcane damage effectively and arcane barrier. Yeah.
Basically.
Pretty much. But so we do this with every player. If you're gonna be new, you're gonna be picking up a budget of you got a budget of to for your collection. Okay, if you were to pick up your first legendary for this Iyslander hero, which piece of equipment would you say I'd prioritize getting this one first?
Has to be Striders. I mean, it's not really a question.
Yeah,
it's Striders.
Yeah, the other ones are really good, I imagine, but they're not going to win you the game. Like no.
Like you could like maybe make an argument for Tunic if you're like someone who wants to get into a bunch of different heroes. Tunic will be more like versatile.
Yeah.
But if you're just looking for the best legendary for Iyslander, it's Striders.
Yeah.
It's not really a question.
No.
It's so good. It's so impactful. The ability to just threaten like 8 damage at instant speed. Like if even without an arsenal, if you have Strides up and you've got a full hand, you could possibly do 8 damage to them at instant speed. From Red Ice Rain from hand plus Moon on their turn.
Mm.
And this is really really spooky. Because you can do that off like 3 blues as well. Off like no, you can do this off 2 blues. I think one for the 2 blues as well.
Yeah, you can just do it off 2 if you have that one resource floating. Even if you didn't have Tunic, which is like you said, Tunic's incredibly strong, and that card's just carrying you through the basically the early mid game. The whole way, that card's carrying you through all that bit, and then Stormstriders is like, oh no, they're on to they're 10 health or lower, and you go, Stormstriders is now active.
Stormstriders is so strong.
It carries wizards. It's literally the reason wizards are winning.
It makes people unable to like play out their hand as well. So I'm going to reference my game with Pablo again in the finals.
Yeah.
If you I was not on an arsenal for like a couple of those last turns in the game, and I'm just being like, okay, I'll swing. Yeah, I had the Scar into Wounded Bull turn, and then and then I had the what do you call it? The East Strike into Bull turn, which is great turns to have. That really kept the pressure on. If I had not got Striders up, Pablo could decide to take. If I didn't have Striders, Pablo could decide to take damage there, and just hit me with his cards, and he'd be very low, sure, but then I'd be forced into the defensive, and it wouldn't necessarily go for like. It wouldn't necessarily be like great for him because maybe I would be able to find an arsenal and do something, but the Strider's threat means you just can't do that. You'll just die, especially because like it turned out that even that like in that game I didn't actually activate the Striders, but even without using them, they were still a really important part of how I won that game, even though I didn't even activate them.
Yeah, because it's just cuz. It's just cuz.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
You just can't go empty-handed against a wizard with low health. You just die.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Striders, they're great. I love them. Absolutely insane. Then only weapon I play on the list, Waning Moon.
We talked a lot about Waning Moon. And through all the cards and in every aspect, it deals 2 if you played a non-attack action on your turn. It deals 3 if you do it on their turn. I'm pretty sure you can look at this and go, yes, this card is doing so much work because you're just doing something on both sides of the table, and it's also one of those cards that helps you go, okay, because it's an instant. It's also it helps you keep your channel around. This is for the second turn of your turn, if that makes sense. The second counter you can put on it. Yeah, 100%.
Moon is so important for your game plan. A lot of the cards that you play on the opponent's turn are costed 1 cost, so you can pitch a blue to play them and Moon. Because Moon for 3 damage for 2 resources on the opponent's turn at instant speed is a really good rate. In addition, it's the main outlet to main way you'll keep channel around for the second turn is by doing an Ice Vein, pitching an ice card, fusing with an ice card, and then Waning Moon to pitch that second ice card. And it's only just 2 damage on your turn. You generally don't want to play around using it on your turn that much, but you can if you need to. It gives you something to do if you've just got extra cards. It's so important to like the weapon. The weapon is so important to your game plan. It's a lot of the way that you do chip damage on the opponent's turn. It's a really, really strong weapon. Only weapon you play. There's never a reason why you play anything else.
Yeah,
you know,
100%. 100%. Okay, so that is your equipment. There is your main board. I was just saying with the slight design rock gauntlet as well. It blocks one.
Oh,
it blocks one.
It's good.
Here's the thing.
Blocks on hits.
No. Here's the thing. Right. So why not Ironhide gauntlets? The one that you pay 1 resource, block 2.
So the Ironhide used to be really good. Used to be like the choice back last year. In particular, Iyslander had more good 0-cost spells to play from Arsenal last year. And that gives you a nice resource curve of play 0-cost spell from Arsenal, pitch a blue, Waning Moon, have 1 floating that you can pay for Ironhide on, and that doesn't come up as much anymore. Now it really tends to be either you'll have to use your Tunic to pay for Ironhide, which generally is like fine because you're limited by when you've got Tunic up, or it'll just happen when it happens, and you tend to then be able to block 2 with it at some point during the game, but it won't be necessarily when you want to. It'll just be, I can do it now, we'll block 2. And I'm like, no, we're just going to move away from it. Go to the Iron Rot. The Iron Rot, I can just block 1 with it, block on hits. It's just blocks 1. It's good.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair enough. That is fair enough. So the sideboard plan, we've got. Since we're talking about equipment, let's just stick with equipment, right? We went with Iron Rot gloves, and then you got Metacarpus nodes as your sideboard. When does that come in?
So Metacarpus nodes is against anyone that does 1 arcane damage, infrequently. It comes in against Briar, and it comes in against Dromai, and it comes in against Wizards when you just want all the arcane barrier.
Yeah, and Viceroy.
No, it doesn't come in against Viceroy.
Doesn't come in against Viceroy.
Doesn't come in against Viceroy.
Right? Oh yeah, you don't need that. You just go. Oh, my ice is my defense.
No, right. So against Viceroy. All right, we'll talk about Viceroy. That's
what the Illuvians.
That's
the
Illuvians.
That's what the Illuvians for.
Illuvian is genuinely so strong. unbelievably strong. I think there's probably an argument to be made that you could run Metacarpus over Iron Rot in a lot of other matchups as well.
Yeah.
It gives you like extra threat on the kill range. I tend to like Iron Rot just for blocking on hits. It's fine.
Yeah.
It's nice.
Yeah.
But like Metacarpus, it's good. It lets you do a couple of extra damage. In Wizard Mirrors, it's quite nice.
Mm-hmm.
Into Briar, I've seen a Briar. If Briar's on AV3 plus Spell Void 2, Metacarpus can let you pump a Aether Ice Vein to 6, which will let you go over the ability to block it.
Yeah.
And they have to then pay to a discard anyway, even through their Spell Void, which is quite handy. I won a game against Alex Chitu with that.
Oh, okay. And he's no slouch in the UK.
Yeah, he was on like 6 health, 2 cards in hand, AV3, 2 floating, and Spell Void 2. And I had Red Ice Vein in hand, and an Ice Bolt, an Arsenal, and an Insidious Chill Up.
Yeah.
And so I managed to play out the Ice Vein, pumping it to 6. So he has to then pay to a discard to chill. He has to take 6, take at least 1 from the Ice Vein, pay to a discard, and then I managed. Then with Waning Moon, finish him off with the Ice Ball. It was a great game, but managed to just snipe lethal there. It was good to see, And
that's Metacarpus nodes for you.
Yeah, Metacarpus nodes. It's a very good card. I think you could make an argument to run it in over Iron Rot, particularly in matchups where they don't have great on hits. Just the ability to like push an extra one. It's probably fine. That said, I tend to leave it in sideboard. Particularly Dromai and Briar though are heroes that will occasionally do 1 arcane damage to you, but not very often. And so it's nice to have the ability to block 1 arcane when you want to. Be like, oh, okay, Briar's made a rune chant. I'll block 1 arcane. I've got the resources. If Briar's going to do Rosetta, coming in for 2 and 1 rune chant for whatever reason, you feel like Pitcher Blue, AB1 with Metacarpus, AB2 the Rosetta off Striders.
Yeah.
And you just cover it up. Quite nice. But then here's the big boy anti-room tech is the Alolan Constellis, which comes in against Viserai and against Wizards and against Vincent as well.
Yeah.
Alolan Constellis is the reason why you don't want to be the Arcane Wizard in the Wizard Mirror.
Yeah.
Because Alolan, it's got AV1, and whenever you use the Arcane Barrier on it, you get a counter. And whenever you use the counter, and whenever you get the counter, when you get 2 counters, you can use it to make your next Waning Moon cost 3 less. This basically equates to every point of arcane damage you prevent gives you 1.5 arcane damage. Gives you 1.5 arcane damage back in terms of Waning Moon, which is an insanely high rate. In addition,
it's great. It's crazy. It is crazy.
Viserai also basically always has attacks you with a rune chant every turn.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah.
So you get crazy good value out of that. And same with Vincent as well. These Alolan does so much work in these matchups. It's so strong. It's a legendary strong enough that when it's like good, you just run it over Tunic without really thinking about it. It's so good.
Yeah.
It's just very situational.
That's it. So it's something that is it's very, when it shows up in the matchup, boy does it do its job and then some.
It's so good. Yeah.
And other than that, it does nothing.
Yeah, basically, it's it's played in 4 matchups, and not all of them are very popular.
But you can't not bring it, right?
You can't not bring it. If you don't bring it and then you come up against another Iyslander, you will get it will not be good, because they are going to be arcane barriering your arcane and getting counters, and you're not going to be able to do the same thing to them.
No.
It'll be very bad.
Yeah. 100%.
The other equipment is Null Rune Hood. This is specifically for wizards. When you want the full AV5 package.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just be I'm immune to damage. You can't do anything to me.
Yeah.
Null Rune Hood goes in against wizards. It gives you the ability to just say no to whatever they're trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
It does against Iyslander. It's I think a bit better than Coronet Peak, but not much better than Coronet Peak. Coronet Peak will generally block 2, and the active's not very good in the mirror. And Null Rune Hood gives you the ability to generally block 1 off the 3 Ice Veins, so it blocks 3. And it also lets you AB5 when they're pumping stuff with Metacarpus.
Yeah, no.
fine. Mainly, it's really good to Kano because it means you can completely block out anything Kano wants to do because you've got AB5.
And it's just
like
that's just crazy.
If you have an E-Pot and a blue in hand, it means you can block out 5 on like Wildfire. And because Kano runs Moon in the mirror, Kano runs Moon into other wizards, yeah. He can only push 5 on Wildfire. So having an E-Pot up and Nullerine Hood means you can generally play a lot safer into Kano. You should still need to watch out for things like double Wildfire, but it's quite nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, one other thing about Alluvion as well. Is Alluvion reduces the cost of your next staff ability by 3.
Yeah.
And Waning Moon only costs 2.
Yeah.
So in the mirror against Iyslander, if you're about to get a Frostbite, you can use Alluvion before you get the Frostbite.
Yeah.
Let the Frostbite resolve.
Yeah.
Then Waning Moon.
Yeah.
And the Frostbite makes it cost 1 more.
Yeah.
And the Alluvion makes it cost 3 less, so it's still free. And it breaks Frostbite.
It's very... Talk about efficiency.
It's pretty good. And if you're going to get comboed by if you're going to get comboed by like Frost Texas and they're trying to give you the Ice Eternal.
Yeah.
And you've got 4. If you've got 2, you can activate Alolan Constellis twice.
Right.
And it make it something cost 6 less. So you can double tap Alluvion, then swing Waning Moon to
at minus
at minus 4.
Yeah.
So you can like not have to pay to break 4 Frostbites, which is insane. Like that's so good, and you can Alluvion is incredibly good in the mirror because it lets you do weird things around Frostbites as well.
That's really cool. Right, we'll move over to some of these other cards. So you had... We'll address this, right. Sigil of Permafrost, you put this in because...
Because I don't have Warmongers.
Right. So Sigil of Permafrost would have been... Warmongers.
It would have been Warmongers, probably. A lot of these sideboard cards are like kind of budget. None of these particularly expensive ones. I think Sigil of Permafrost is the weakest of them.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically only goes in against Fi, because against Fi you don't really need to block all of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Because he only generally presents damage, and like the damage is nasty, sure, but like there aren't any real on hits most of the time. They're usually like the on hits +1 damage. It's like it's okay. Sigil of Permafrost can be used then because he's almost always on AB 1 or 0 to tax him resources and give him damage, and it tends not to clog up the hands. Because you only ever have... I've only got 2 of them in the list.
Yeah.
And you can just... And you can generally pitch them when you don't need them, they're not useful. And you can... If you see one when you've got Tunic up, Tunic counter, Ice Fuse, Sigil of Permafrost, block 2, Waning Moon, give 2 or 3 Frostbites and do a bit of damage. It's good.
Yeah.
It's not like the best card ever, and I would be very happy to cut it, but it was like something... And I've played 2 Fis in the Calling, so it's honestly not terrible.
It turned out very useful.
Turned out okay.
Yeah.
Turned out okay. I did have one very good use out of it. E-Pots for the Wizard Mirror.
Yeah.
And for Kano and Iyslander. Incredibly useful. Just being able to have like effectively an extra 6 block available when you need it is very handy.
Mm-hmm.
It turns out against Wizards.
Yeah.
Being able to just like play off lower cards hands to be able to like do... Just big E-Pots are like the best card you could have in the Wizard Mirror. Like they're so strong. They go in for no other matchups. If you're sure you're going to someone who's going to hard fatigue you, and is definitely going to need to be Frost-X comboed, you would run E-Pots then as well.
I was going to say, with the E-Pot's one of those things that I remember playing from the last year's Nationals that they're very crucial for the combo, right? Because for every one of these E-Pots I put down was effectively just one more Frostbite, one more damage, and
it's one more.
Yeah.
It's effectively 4 more damage because you get 1 from the Ice Eternal and then 3 from the Frost X's for every Frostbite you do. And in addition, it makes the combo more secure because if you've given them, they get no opportunity to break the Frostbites before they're applied. Yeah, so if you're applying 5 Frostbites and your opponent can like pitch 6 to do something to like take Tunic counter, for instance, they can break the Frostbites. It's really sad. It's really bad. If on the other hand you're giving them 8 Frostbites, then they can't do that anymore.
And that's an insane amount of damage as well on top of that. That's an insane amount of damage.
Yeah. So E-Pots are good for when you're trying to like hard fatigue someone, as well. But no one is doing that as their primary game plan right now into Iyslander.
So yeah, it's not coming.
Unless you're sure it's happening, you wouldn't put them in. Unless you're against Wizards, there's a blue card. It's E-Pot. It's so strong.
Yeah. Okay, so
yeah,
I want to move over to this other really weird card. I did not expect to see this. The Channel the Bleak Expanse. Explain yourself, Sammy.
So, Channel the Bleak Expanse is... It fits into your cost curve well.
Yeah.
It also is, like, really good into Katsu, actually.
Yeah.
And it has, like, play into, like, Lexi and the Brutes as well. Because if you can, in response to a 3 of a kind, play Channel the Bleak Expanse, they can't draw.
No.
And then they'll feel very sad.
Yeah, okay, and I get that, but I'm just gonna be that guy on the other side of the YouTube screen now, where they'll go, yeah, but bro, right? It's a bit of a, you got to have that in Arsenal at the time that they play that at the right time.
Yeah.
Is there a time? That shows up
realistically? Realistically, it's a blue ice card.
Yeah.
That occasionally has an upside. Like the baseline of being a blue ice card is quite high, and it's therefore like generally kind of fine. I would probably put it into Katsu and Azalea, particularly because Azalea has always got the Death Dealer draw one.
Mm-hmm.
And so Channel is actually quite good there. Generally, you can make her not unable to draw the card off Death Dealer twice, like for 2 turns in a row, usually fairly easily, and it's decent there. Into Katsu, it turns off like all his on hits.
Yeah.
No, he can't trigger Mask. He can't use his hero ability. He can't use bonds. He can't draw cards off like Whelming, Gustwave, or Bagenshi, or anything. And so, like, he just does vanilla damage now, and it's like, okay, that's a lot less spooky. It's probably one of the cards that will get cut. Yeah. I do quite like it still.
Yeah.
It's a card that I definitely prefer to Sigil. I think into the Brutes or Lexi, I think it's less good, because you have to try and Arsenal it at the right time to try and like predict the 3 of a kind or Blood Rush Bellows.
Yeah.
And that's not really happening much. If I've seen that Alexi's gone through like a significant portion of their deck, and they've then still not blocked out, and they've still not seen a 3 of a kind, then I'm maybe thinking, maybe I'll try and Arsenal the next Channel the Bleak Expanse,
Yeah, yeah.
But I wouldn't really try and push it unless I see this happening.
Yeah.
Or if you Scar for Scar, and then if you've got a Scar for example, a hand that's Scar for Scar, Wounded Bull, 2 blues, and you play Scar for Scar, and they block the Scar for Scar, that's also a time when you think, this are they maybe signaling that they're going to play 3 of a kind and they're going to draw a bunch of cards? And so should I maybe attack with pitch the other card to Wounded Bull and Arsenal the Channel Bleak Expanse, because they've got a 3 of a kind to draw up again? Because this is a lot of the time when Lexi's use 3 of a kind, is they're going to try and draw up with it, because it's quite hard for them to use like a 7 card hand or whatever, and it just lets them block like 3 times and then draw up to like a full hand still. It's very handy. It's very good card, obviously, but it can kind of telegraph it occasionally. Yeah. I still think Channel's not great in these situations, but the opportunity cost of having Channel in the list is quite low, because it's a blue ice card. Yeah, it's fine, and I do think it's quite good to Katsu.
Right. Yeah, fair enough.
So that's Channel Big Expanse.
Good explanation. I love it. What would you swap it into?
I would go into Brutes, Rangers, and Katsu. I think basically.
Yeah, that's fair. But what if you wanted to swap the card? Someone's going to say, right.
As in swap. Right.
If you want to thinking, I'm going to take this out of my deck, what would you consider put it in?
Yeah. So this is probably also like where maybe third one goes in. I'm currently only running 2 E-Strike. I just didn't have a 3rd E-Strike when I went to the Calling, so the 3rd E-Strike's going in as well, so something needs to come out for that. Possibly Heart of Fiandal if you have it. If you don't have it, Heart of Fiandal's not a particularly big deal. You don't need it that much. Like, there are other cards that would go in over Channel Big Expanse, which does make me sad, because I do like it, but like, the reality is, it's a good card in like 2 matchups, and it's a fine, maybe questionable card in like 3 other matchups.
Yeah.
And it's like, is it that good? In addition, Warmongers does its job better into Azalea, because into Azalea, if you're looking for an Azalea hate card, Warmongers is really good in there.
Yeah.
And so, and also the other thing is that Channel is omnidirectional; it hits you as well. And you do draw cards from Cold Snap and Polar Blast, and you do reveal cards for Ice Vein.
Right. Yeah.
It's generally not in an attack action card, it's generally not as bad, because you can just be like, right, on my next turn, it's like, I put Channel last slot, I see I've drawn for Wounded Bull, I'm like, I'll attack with this Wounded Bull this turn, and I don't need to reveal or do anything. and then you don't have to keep Channel the Expanse around. So if you're going to like counter a 3 of a kind or something, you can just leave. You can just get rid of Channel as well after that turn. That said, it's still sometimes a liability when you can't fuse yourself.
No, that's fair. And speaking of fusing, we've got 3 in cases. Really cool card. Yes. When did they come in and why?
I'm currently running them to Lexi.
Yeah.
It lets you time war if they have a 0 cost card and a arrow and arsenal as the 1 face down card, and you encase them. You can stop them flipping over the card, which means that they can't give it go again.
Mm-hmm.
Which means that they can't have the extra arsenal slot to give something go again.
Mm-hmm.
It also freezes their snapdragons, so they can't give it go again with the snapdragons either.
Mm-hmm.
Lexis have adapted this by running Trench.
Mm-hmm.
Trench means they can just sink the card to the bottom and pay 1 to ABE the encase. This is like still good for you. Generally, I think encase is still fine here. Like. Encase also just pushes damage as well, and is a fuse target, and is generally better than Warmongers for doing this. Because Warmongers does a similar thing, but it's a blue and it doesn't do anything else. Well, Encase is like do 3 damage, and it's it's like you do 3 damage, and you get to like make them actually make them do the trench thing as well, and they can't use Snapdragons to get out of it. I think it's a fine card. I think it's a card that you could cut if you know Lexis are going to be on trench. I would probably rather have it than Warmongers in the deck if Azalea wasn't a thing, because Warmongers is really good into Azalea in case it isn't, and you don't really like. And in cases like fine if they're on trench, it's really good if they're on Tunic, and you always want to make sure that you can, particularly if you're going to get to a top 8, if you're trying to get to a top 8, and you want any Lex you should play against to not be able to like see your list, so you're not running anything that punishes them for running Tunic and then run Tunic, because that's really bad for you now. But if they see that you're running if they see that you're running in case, they have to run the trench. Them running trench is good for you because the Tunic is quite strong. So yeah, I think in case is generally good. I would maybe think about cutting it, but I think it's a fine card. I would be less like Sigil's the card here that I would be like very fine with cutting. Channel is like all right. I in cases when I'm making like actual tough decisions about is this card or this card better, like would I be getting more value about like Command and Conquers versus Encase?
Yeah.
Is the reason why Command and Conquers are not in the list is because I didn't have any.
Oh, right.
Again, like this list is a slightly budget list, which like the big expensive cards like Tunic and Striders are there, but the really the expensive like luxury cards like CNC, Warmongers, Heart of Feandal aren't in this list.
Yeah.
And therefore they have like other things that like are kind of doing the job, and I think in some cases doing the job better, but in some cases doing the job worse.
Yeah, I think that's a really cool point, and something that everyone should just be should really focus on. Really, is that yes, we don't have Heart, we don't have Warmongers, we don't have CNC, right? Still on the calling. So it just goes to show that yes, we're not saying it's not good, because they are good. That's the reason why they are expensive, because they're very good. But with the right sort of cards slotting into their place, hey, you don't need these cards to win the calling, man. But you do need to have some expensive cards. You do need a Storm Striders, and a Tunic really is massive. So
the Striders and the Tunic, I wouldn't. I don't
think the deck. Yeah, the deck wouldn't even.
The deck doesn't really function at that point,
Yeah. Well, and I know you got one Brain Freeze in there. We'll just end on that point.
Yeah, the Brain Freeze is there because we're running 3 of Brain Freeze and Winter's Bite. One of them gets sideboarded in, depending on matchup, basically.
Simple as that.
Yeah, basically.
Cool. Right, that's kind of the whole. That's the whole list. I think that's everything, That is everything, dude. Thank you so much for taking your time to go through this.
I'm glad to be on. It's been a pleasure. It's great to sort of talk about this. I think it's important. I think I'm like happy to come on here and say that like some of this list is not like the absolute most expensive cards, the best of the best. And, like I'm quite happy that there's like a good list to be like. So you don't need to have like every little thing in order to do well. But I do think that some cards here are too expensive. I think Tunic is way too expensive right now.
Yeah.
But I think that the fact that you can still do well without getting all the really expensive stuff, I think is an important message. It's Flesh and Blood is a very skill based game, and I'm very happy that it's
that you've proven that. You've taken that. Yeah. You've taken that and actually proven that you don't need to have all the most crazy expensive cards to win it. You do need to knuckle down on one or two things and play. Just play this deck. Play the game often. Master that hero, and then you'll soon find that actually certain cards can actually fill that sort of slot. A little bit more awkward, but it can be done. Thank you. Yeah. Dude, thank you so much for taking your time to go through this. The deck link is below, and I'll also... You're on Twitter, aren't you?
Vaguely. I mean, kind of.
It's kind of? Okay, where is there any... What's the best place for someone to reach out to you? Is it Discord? Or?
Probably Discord, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm very occasionally on Twitter.
Oh, no, that's fine. That's fine.
I have a Twitter account in case I need to, I don't know, look on Twitter, but basically Discord is the place where I'd actually be active and would respond to people.
And what's your name on Discord?
Spinos123 on Discord.
And I'll put the link below. I'll put your name in below on the
link. I'm active in the Wizards and the Iyslander channel of the main Flesh and Blood Discord.
Awesome.
And so it's been a pleasure being on. I'm very glad.
Thank you so much, and deck link below, and good luck at your nationals, everyone. See you later.
Yeah. See ya.